Okay, so I was asked to demonstrate a scoring system for this quiz. So the way you do that is we already have in text control a check to see if the right or the wrong answer has been selected. That's here. So if correct answer, rand question is equal to the selected answer, then correct. Else it's incorrect. So basically, we already have carved out the two places to detect whether or not the right or wrong answer has been chosen. So basically, we just need to have a variable added in there to have a running tally, because that's the only thing we're really not doing is we don't have that running tally, and a running tally is a score. So in the text control script, we're just going to add a new variable. We're going to actually add one more in a couple minutes, but we'll start with public. And it will be int. And it will be, let's see, let's call this total correct. And it'll start off at 0. And what you simply do is you don't have to check for how many wrong you have unless you want to have that as a separate tally as well. So you can do that too, you just have a separate variable. But for now, we're just going to have the total correct. So let's come down here. So this is where we're looking for the correct selection. So that new variable, total correct, plus equals 1. So basically, this is going to increase with every correct answer. Now, we're going to add a second variable. Like I said, we're going to add one more. Public int. We're going to do total. Let's do total questions. This way you can either display a score or you can display a percent, because clearly this divided by this would be a percent. So basically in here, because this if statement is what the right and wrong choices are placed in, because this is where, okay, it's saying you have if choice selected is equal to yes, set it back to no, and now check to see if your choice is right or wrong. So what you can do is you could either put it into either one of, you'd have to put it into both of these because they're mutually exclusive, or you could just put it outside of that. So within this if, but outside of these ifs that are nested inside of it, you can just do total questions plus equals 1. And now we need to, we're going to take those two values, calculate the percentage, and then have that be outputted to a new object. So we're going to do another text object. Let's just, rather than copying one of these, we'll just create a new one from scratch. So create empty, add component, mesh, text mesh, and it's a character size of like 0.15. Font size is 228, and font is Arial. And now what we want to do is we want so that script text control is attached to the question text object. So we need to transfer these values, or at least the calculation from these values, over into this new object that was just created. So to do that, we're going to create a transform variable and then link it to this object. So we're going to go back into text control. That's where we just were. I'm going to add a third variable. So public transform and we'll call this score obj. When we save it, you'll see it's now here. So we can just take that new game object and we drag and drop it into the score object. And it can now make changes. So when I say it, the question text object, since it is aware of the score text object because of this variable, can now make changes to it. So what we want to do is in the update section, we will just, with every frame, because update is run once per frame, we will just take that new object. So score obj dot get component text mesh dot text equals, and it will be equal. We're going to do this a couple different ways. We can just put total correct in there. But now you have a score without any text. Well, you have a number without anything identifying it. So what we can do is we can do, let's see, so quotations, the word score with a colon, more quotations, and then a plus. For whatever reason, a plus sign is used for concatenating. Concatenating is when you combine two strings into one. We've got the semicolon. Okay, so score 0. So let's do that. Score 1. So clicked on that, did not change it, but then again, I didn't skip to the next one. So go to the next one, and we'll choose the wrong one. As you can see, score did not increase. So that's how you can just do regular score. So let's add a new variable to assist with the calculation. So public float, because we want this to support decimals. We might round off, but for now we'll just have it. We'll have it support decimals for the moment. So public float, and we'll just have this be score PER, short for score percent. Here, what we're going to do is we'll copy the current one, so we don't have to retype all that. Remark this one out. Paste it back in, so that way we still have the original in case we ever need it again. And instead of total correct, it will now have score percent. And then the plus sign, quotation, space, percent, and another quotation mark. So that way there's a percent sign after it, indicating that your score is measured in percent. Now, the only problem is this is set to 0 and then nothing actually happens with it. So we need to do a calculation. So we want score PER to be equal to total correct divided by total questions. And then we need that number to be multiplied by 100. That way we move the decimal point 2 places. So far so good. We now calculate a percent, and we have that percent displayed in the text mesh object. Only problem is this starts off as 0. This would give us an error message because it doesn't like to divide by 0. So a simple way around that is that it just does not get calculated until after you've done your first question. So if total questions is greater than 0, then go ahead and calculate the score percent. I think that should do it. So we'll choose Mexico City. Goes up to 100%. Click on next. Let's choose the wrong one. Drops to 0, so it does not like this. So if total questions is greater than 0, score PER, total correct divided by total questions times 100. Wondering if it's because these are ints, and so even though the calculation is being dropped into a float, I'm wondering if because these are ints, it's causing a problem. So really no reason for these not to be floats. And we'll see if that fixes it. So Brazil. Next. There we go. So rather than going back and editing out that mistake, I'd rather have you see that everything can look okay, and yet it did not work because these were ints. And because they were ints, even though the calculation was being dropped into a float, them being ints still made this not work. So it's a teachable moment. So rather than, like I said, going back and editing it out, I'd rather have you see me make that mistake. And then you can see that sometimes it looks absolutely right, but depending on what you chose as the type of variable can make all the difference. So that should do it. That is the scoring system. We saw two types. We saw a cumulative score, and then we saw a percent score. So that should do it.